This is Klean Radio.
Welcome everybody out there listening to Klean Radio, a show about addiction and recovery and everything in the middle. And I think tonight it's safe to say we are discussing the middle. And I'd like to wish everybody out there happy holidays, happy Passover, happy Easter, and apparently to 30,000 people in Colorado, happy pot holiday. And that's or 420, right? I'm not really cool on the lingo. I was never able to say marijuana and have it sound cool. When I would say a joint, it sounded like a narc. And I just never have been able to say it correctly. And we're going to be discussing it tonight. We have an amazing guest in the studio tonight, and I actually have a lot of respect for this guest tonight. Her name is Cheryl Shuman. She's the founder of the Beverly Hills Cannabis Club, and she's got an amazing history. And one of the reasons I actually wanted to talk about this tonight is because this is a topic of, I don't want to say debate, it's a topic that needs to be spoken about. And we're a show about addiction and recovery, and Andrew and I have often said we're not the temperance movement. We're also not against the legalization in certain ways. But one of the things I wanted to talk about is our guest tonight has really, is leading the forefront in the battle for the legalization, and she's had her own experiences. And I just want to say this right away. I'm totally pro, medical marijuana if it is disposed in the hospitals and doctors could give scripts. And the reason is because if people are in pain, it's none of my business how they get help or how they seek treatment. With that said, I do want to welcome to Klean Radio. I also want to get your opinions on this, and I want to get your opinions before I get to the guest. And to give us a call, the number is 800-222-5222. That's 800-222-5222. I want to hear your stories tonight. I want to hear if you've smoked pot and it's been good for you. I want to hear if you smoked pot and it's been bad for you. Because the only way we're going to actually have discussion is not talking heads on TV. It's not politicians. It's the people that are actually doing it, sharing their experiences, whether it's been good for them or if it's been bad for them. And maybe somehow we can meet in the middle, because it is going to be legal one day. And we have to figure out a way to regulate it. And with that, let's welcome to Klean Radio, Cheryl Shuman.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
And did I pronounce your name correctly?
Cheryl Shuman, yes.
That's great. Thank God, yes. And you're the founder of the Beverly Hills Cannabis Club.
Yes, I am.
And you're really one of the innovators of getting this off the ground.
Yes, I like to pride myself in following the footsteps of Pauline Sabin back in the 1930s. She was a woman of society who led her society Women Friends to overturn alcohol prohibition, and we are witnessing the beginning of the end of cannabis prohibition right now.
See, this is a great point, because a lot of people are say, well, the whole argument is, well, alcohol's legal, right? And what I say to them is, so we made mistakes. And I'm not saying alcohol shouldn't be legal. That's not what I'm saying. But when we remade it legal, when prohibition ended, some might say a mistake was that we didn't set up mental health facilities to deal with the addiction that might happen, that we didn't build enough rehabs. Yeah.
Well, my position is really looking at this as a harm reduction. I personally don't feel that anyone that has a drug addiction issue, whether it's caffeine, marijuana, cocaine, or heroin, I believe that they belong in rehab and not in jail, because I believe it's a harm reduction issue. Without
a doubt. So, going back. So after this woman.
Oh, well, after this woman, no, for me, it was different. I had tried cannabis before. I've never tried cocaine or any other kind of illegal drugs, but I tried cannabis for the first time back in the 90s, and was actually prescribed it for a severe anxiety disorder. And before that, I had tried cannabis, recreationally with some of my friends. I felt like it was a safer alternative to alcohol from a calorie intake and so forth. But it really saved me from a life of antidepressants, anti-anxiety, sleep pills, and it worked for me. And then in 2006, I really had a major impact because I was diagnosed with cancer. And in the beginning, when it was suggested to me by my doctors that this could be a safer alternative to chemo and radiation, and then also dealing with the pain issues, the nausea issues, that's when I learned to really look into it as a serious medicine. And when I did that, I've spent time in Israel working with Dr. Raphael Meshulam and the University of Jerusalem and some of the top endocannabinoid scientists all throughout the world. world. And that's when I learned about the 27 actual different chemical compounds that can be derived from cannabis. And there are chemical compounds that I'm sure you've heard Dr. Sanjay Gupta talk about with CBDs and endocannabidiols, which are completely non-psychoactive and have been linked to showing reduction in tumor growth, which is exactly what happened in my case. So for me, it was very important as a woman of society and a professional woman to put a new face on a modern cannabis consumer, because there are professionals and corporate people all around the world who are using cannabis responsibly as a medicine or as a safer alternative to alcohol in the 2 legal states now. And I felt it was very important to come out of the closet, very similar to the LGBT movement, and put a face on it. And
I think some in the LGBT movement might say they're 2 totally separate issues. One is a civil right to be accepted as gay, to be accepted as... This is for many to get high.
Well, in some cases you are correct, but actually I do believe this is a lifestyle choice. It's my body, my choice, whom I choose to love, how I choose to medicate myself, and how I choose to treat my body. So I actually do believe it's a civil rights issue, very much so.
But don't we also have a civil rights issue to protect children, to protect teenagers, to protect... I mean, there's absolutely no regulation right now on marijuana if it's made legal. Very sparse regulation.
Well, first of all, one thing I'd like to add is I'm the executive director for Moms for Marijuana. We have over 250,000 members of women who are mothers, and we strongly advocate the responsible adult use of legal cannabis users. We do not advocate for use of underage minors using cannabis in any way, shape, or form,
right,
unless
they have cancer or they're sick.
Cancer, Dravet syndrome, and it works.
So here's my question to you. I agree. Like I'm saying, I think it's great. I think the medical marijuana, why not just stop there? What is it that we need? Some people, the message might be lost for the need with medical marijuana, and then everybody else's right to get high. Why not just stop with let's legislate medical marijuana?
Well, it's very simple. The drug war has failed. We're spending so much more money in taxpayer dollars by jailing people for non-violent offenses. And when you consider the fact that money, through a proper taxation and regulation business model for cannabis, whether it be for medical cannabis or for the responsible adult use of cannabis, the revenue built from that can actually fund rehab facilities and actually help people to get well. And the bottom line is we are at a record high acceptance across the entire country.
We're at 54% of Americans, but we're also at 51% of Americans getting divorced. We're at, no offense to Americans out there, but I don't exactly trust. We don't make rules with the percentage of Americans that agree on something or not. I don't necessarily think that's the gauge for why it should be legal or it shouldn't be legal. Sometimes people are just tired of arguing. They're like, already, okay, we get it. You want to get high, you want to smoke pot. I just think it takes away from your amazing message of the medical marijuana for cancer patients, for people that are sick of all different sorts. I mean, listen, the drug companies are giving us horrific drugs, that are so addictive in some ways. And you're somewhat of a natural cure. Why not just focus on that?
Well, because I think actually cannabis, for me, I actually believe it's a wellness product. I believe that if cannabis were discovered in the Amazon jungle today, it would be discovered as a superfood, as a nutrient, as a super drug. I mean, you can use cannabis, for example, every single morning when I wake up, I juice cannabis. I put it in my protein smoothies. It's completely non-psychoactive, and I am relieved of my asthma. I'm relieved of my neuropathic pain issues all day long, and it doesn't get me high at all.
Right, but you're a very bright woman. You're very articulate. I'll stop at the compliments on that.
Oh, no, don't.
And a very attractive woman. But we don't. What about the people that aren't exactly as bright, aren't exactly as well educated on the subject? We have, the pot stores dispensing candies with marijuana. We've had deaths. And I hate bringing up those, the few stories about the person that took the candy and jumped out of a building, because that happens with everything. There's always that. But isn't it our job sometimes to not just worry about, because you're responsible. We get that. You're the pop mom. You run the cannabis club. But aren't we a little responsible for society?
Well, absolutely, we're responsible for society. I wanted to address the one issue where you talked about the gentleman that jumped out of the hotel room who had cannabis in his system. What people don't know about that particular media outlet is he also had oxycodone and a number of other.
Again, why I don't like bringing up one person and why I couldn't agree with you more. There's always going to be the story of the good story and the bad story. By the way, if you just tuned in, you're listening to Klean Radio. We're in the studio tonight with the Pop Mom, also founder of the Beverly Hills Cannabis Club, Cheryl Shuman. So give us a call. The number is 800-222-5222. That's 800-222-5222. I really wanted to do this show tonight because I do think this has to be talked about. Because people in recovery get confused about it because there's a thin line, because when you're sober, it's refraining from all drugs, and there might come the point where somebody needs to be in cancer treatment, and they make that decision to take pot. And I think it's extremely important. So give us a call. That's 800-222-5222. That's 800-222-5222. Let's get to a call. We have Amy in Vancouver, Washington. Amy, welcome back, as always, to Klean Radio. You're here with Cheryl and me.
Hi, Cheryl.
Hi, Amy.
Hi, Amy.
I wanted to tell her that, I was a recipient of torture from a man who was a chronic marijuana smoker, but he also has a mental health disorder. And my son is now in his care. And in the past, he has rolled a vehicle with my son in it. They live way out in the middle of Timbuktu, so there was no law enforcement called. And so my son was never taken to the hospital, never taken to the doctor, and it kind of pretty much went under the rug. And yet he's also been, in the past, intoxicated with marijuana when I was still there. And I guess what I wanted to ask is, what are your views on children who are at the mercy of a person that's irresponsible? And what are your views on a person that's smoking the drug, which I heard is more potent now than it was before?
Well, I mean, statistically, right? I mean, it's 30% now, and it was 5% in the 70s. Listen, Amy's got a. The question is a very good question. Obviously, Cheryl, it's one of those stories. It's another one of those. The guy, her ex-husband had a serious mental illness and he happened to smoke pot. I don't blame the two necessarily. They don't correlate.
Well, you'll actually find that a tremendous amount of people that have mood disorders, whether it be bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder, schizophrenia, a lot of them actually try to use cannabis to
treat themselves.
To treat themselves, yeah, they're self-medicating. But getting back to the issue, what we're talking about is a parenting issue. This is a parenting issue. I would never, ever advocate for any parent to get into a child under the influence of any drug, whether it be pharmaceuticals, whether it be alcohol, whether it be cannabis, that it's simply not safe. So in my opinion, that person really needs to have a look taken at their parental rights. So I would support you as a mother making sure that the welfare of your child is a paramount of importance. It's always about the children. We have to make sure that the children are safe.
And Amy, thank you for the call, by the way. We're having an issue with our phones, so if you call in, you're getting a hard time getting through, I'm sorry about that. And Cheryl, listen, again, Amy's talking about a personal issue and a personal story, and that's not all the stories. But part of the reason I wanted to talk to you about separating the medical marijuana from people, just the 30,000 people right now in Colorado that are celebrating 420, is because in a sense, I think it hurts the cause a little bit.
Well, I absolutely agree with you. Here's the biggest problem in the cannabis industry itself right now. There's a tremendous division and actually a war within the war itself. You have the medicals, which are people who feel that only medical cannabis should be legalized for responsible use with patients of 21 and over. Then you have the subculture, which are the dreads, the hippies that feel that cannabis should be free and grown along the countrysides and just be given out free to everyone. Then you have the hardcore criminal element who are going to be growing cannabis and selling it illegally across the country and otherwise, regardless. So here's the issue with that. The genie is out of the bottle.
Right.
Okay, legalization is coming whether people like it or not. So what we have to do as responsible consumers and responsible Americans is see, how do we best regulate this? How do we best turn it around so that people who do have addiction issues or have dealt with, cannabis or other drugs, that they're taken care of and that they're helped to get the hospitalization or whatever they might need.
So let me
they don't deserve to go to prison.
So which we agree with.
Yes.
But where is so let's say we don't trust politicians, right?
That's an understatement.
That's an understatement. And I think we could both agree on that. And so how do we get it? How do we get your movement to say what you just said? Because that's the first time I've actually heard somebody out loud say that tax dollars that we're getting, from the sales of, weed, and it just doesn't sound right me saying it. How do we get them to do that, to give tax dollars to help mental illness, to help open clinics?
Well, that's where Colorado has really come through as the great American experiment. In the very first 5 days of legalization for responsible adult use, they raised $5 million, an average of $1 million a day, which has already gone into the school systems, to rehabilitation. Also, think about our veterans that are coming over that need rehabilitation services, that are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. So Colorado is actually a proven business model, and I think that's why we're seeing states continue to legalize every day. Maryland just legalized again the other day.
I love how we choose to follow certain states on certain things, like Colorado. It's, it's just a bizarre thing how they've taken the forefront on this. Yet in many other areas, I would never follow Colorado.
Do you want to know why?
Yes, why?
Colorado was the very first system and state to come up with a monitoring system. They monitor everything from seed to sale. So from the moment that seed goes into the soil or into the growing medium, it's monitored by the Department of Revenue. So they can track everything. So there's no illegal sales. The government makes sure that they get all of the revenue from it. And it's a system that's working. They're generating record revenue as far
Without
as taxation.
a doubt, yeah.
And that's why everyone's watching it. It has a great system. They're really rocking and rolling. I actually just got back from Denver for the 420. I flew in just back for you.
And what were your thoughts on it? What were your thoughts on it?
Well, I mean...
Do they represent you?
No, actually, I'm kind of an odd duck in this whole thing.
Because you're responsible.
Well, and I'm a 54-year-old mother of two. I come from the corporate world, and I do use cannabis responsibly as a patient. However, that being said, even if I did not use cannabis as a patient, I prefer cannabis as a recreational vehicle instead of alcohol.
And if you just tuned in, you're listening to Clean Radio in the studio tonight with the founder of the Beverly Hills Cannabis Club, Cheryl Shuman. Give us a call. It's 800-222-5222. That's 800-222-5222. I want to get to this call because it's Reggie calling from Northridge. Welcome to Clean Radio, Reggie.
Yes, this is Reggie Lewis. I'm a pilot. I have over 5,000 hours in the air, and I know that there were a number of crashes of aircraft that were flown by doctors and dentists, and they found that the crashes came because about 5,000 feet, the lower lung that has been filled with cannabis comes out and opens up, and it becomes a hallucinogenic.
Right.
And these planes were crashing one after the other, and now you cannot get a license to fly if they know that you're a regular user of cannabis.
Cannabis, yes.
Understand that.
I mean, Reggie, sir.
They shouldn't be flying planes. That's
when exactly did this happen? This all these planes going down?
About a decade back.
Okay, I mean, listen, he actually, you see, even though Reggie's actually raising a good question because we're talking about regulation, and these are all the questions that are going to come about. Obviously, you can't own a gun in this country if you're right. If you check that you smoke pot, you're not going to be able to get a gun license.
Well, he addresses a couple of other very important issues as well, because here's the biggest problem about cannabis right now when you're referring to DUI or driving under the influence or flying under the influence in this particular case. The biggest problem with cannabis right now is it stays in your system. Even if you have one puff of a joint today, that will stay in your system for a full 30 days.
Yes.
So even though from that one puff, the next day you're going to be fine to drive a car, but according to your blood test, if you get pulled over, technically you're under the influence of cannabis. Now, again, I would never advocate that anyone operate a vehicle under the influence of anything.
But this again goes to my point of what I started the show with saying, and I think we actually agree with each other on many things, is that how do you regulate? you know, you're raising a great point. Pot stays in your system for a long time. It stays in your hair if they do the test for a really long time. How do we regulate this? How, you know, I don't want the person that, you know, is smoking, you know, for cancer to get pulled over the next day and get a weedy, whatever they're going to call it, instead of a DWE, and it'll be like a wee-wee. And how do we regulate this? And I don't think we've set up a system. Everybody wants to say, let's legalize. And we haven't put into place yet the functionalities of what we're going to do when we say yes to this.
Well, here I'm going to agree with you again. You're absolutely right. This is one of the biggest issues we're dealing with since Amendment 64 passed in Colorado, as well as 502 in Washington. The biggest issues that are really a debate is how do you control the DUI problem? And there isn't an answer right now. And what's happening is the industry itself everything is changing so rapidly with municipality and city and state all changing the laws. We're all trying to keep up with it. It's coming, but what we need is more people from the lawful side to deal with the people who are the experts on the marijuana side to come together and come up with a compromise.
And mental health side.
Oh,
absolutely. And you know, one big joint venture. But until then, isn't it a little irresponsible? Since we've seen what happened with alcohol, since we've seen what happened with many other things, isn't it, you know, we do it with food. You know, and I'm not a fan of this, of the calorie, you know, when you walk into a restaurant. I don't want to see how much I'm eating, okay? I don't want to know what my caloric intake is at a bad fast food restaurant. Sure. I want to be numb. You know, I want to not know. I want to be totally ignorant is what I should have said. So, you know, what... Is it irresponsible for us to set this up, to legalize it without having set this stuff up? And maybe you're the person. Maybe you're the president.
I am the person.
And maybe you are that person because you have that ability to stand up and say, this is my thing, but maybe we should wait a little bit.
Well, I think the key to this really is women and education, and that's why I work so hard to empower women, because there's this saying...
Women are the key to everything. I agree.
Women are the key to everything.
Yeah.
No, it's true. If you ask people who are working on this behind the scenes and political focus groups and everything, they will tell you that women are the secret to the entire answer to all of these questions, specifically moms. And the bottom line is we have to start a dialogue, and that's why I took my activism to the media. 2 years ago, I started a program about rebranding the face of the modern cannabis consumer, because most of them are people like me. They're just afraid to come out of the closet and acknowledge it. So once you can put a new face on it where people will actually listen and you can start to educate them, that's when you start to change things. But we have to all work together.
That's Cheryl Shuman. The calls are lining up. We're going to take a quick break. Give us a call. The number is 800-222-5222. That's 800-222-5222. I don't even think we're having a debate. We're having a discussion. And I was actually talking to somebody about that today. There's nothing better than a good discussion, because that's the only way things get solved. People debate, they argue, nothing ever gets solved. Give us a call. The discussion continues in a couple seconds at Clean Radio.
Don't let addiction to drugs or alcohol steal another year of your life. Clean Treatment Center provides world-class addiction assistance that also treats the underlying causes and provides vital aftercare so people can get clean and stay clean. Live, kind, professional help is standing by to provide immediate assistance or to simply answer questions and provide guidance. If you or someone you care about is suffering from addiction, take action now and make 2014 the best year of your life with Clean Treatment Center. And Judah Friedman.
Welcome back to Clean Radio. We're in the studio tonight with the incredibly awesome founder of the Beverly Hills Cannabis Club and the pop mom, Cheryl Shuman. An all-around good woman who I actually think is fighting the good fight. And I also think it's hard. I think we're discussing a topic tonight, and it's hard. It's you know, you're fighting for something, and you're fighting for something that's right in many ways, but it's also, sadly, sometimes on the other side, you have people that are, you know, you have the 420, you know, the 30,000 in Colorado who, like you said, you don't exactly always see eye to eye with.
No, I mean, to be honest with you, I get death threats. I get death threats daily from some people in our own community, because you have to understand, I represent the face of corporatization. I represent the face of taxation and regulation, and a business person. A lot of people don't like that. Right. So
They just want to smoke pot. They want to be the... why with that word I'm looking for. They want to be the stereotype for pot.
Well, not only that, but you have to understand, I represent the face that could put some people out of business who are dealing in the criminal sector, and they don't like that so much. But you know what? My attitude is someone had to really step up to the plate and make a difference, and we're at such a tipping point overall. And I think we're onto something. I think that I personally think that legalizing cannabis throughout the entire country would be the best thing we could do for our economy, and I think it could heal a multitude of illnesses all across the world, actually.
And you think we're ready to do it?
Yes, I really do. I think, and it's not just the court of public opinion. I remember when we did the Katie Couric show with Dr. Sanjay Gupta, the audience ratings were 97% in favor of legalization. Right. But when you look at the actual vote, I mean, it's people who are voting state after state after state, municipality after municipality.
Don't you? I mean, that's another skewed, I'm agreeing with you, but that's a very skewed thing. I mean, people go out to vote for the causes they want to go out for. So especially in states like California that have props, the odds are most of the people are going to go vote pro if they want it, but the people that don't want it really usually tend to stay home, except for one thing, which is gay marriage. That's where everybody came out, and one way or the other. Anyways, let's get to some calls. We have Joe calling from Portland, Oregon. Welcome to Clean Radio, Joe.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here.
And Cheryl, I want to congratulate you on being sort of the corporate face of the legalization of marijuana.
Oh, thank you, Joe.
But my question is, I have my own battles. I suffer from PTSD, a couple of tours overseas. The government tried to make me an addict to prescription drugs, and they were completely fine with that, but I can't use something like marijuana to treat myself. But beyond that, the corporate issue, hemp, oil, clothing, paper products. There's a lot of corporate resistance, I would think, to the legalization of something that could be used in industry as a renewable resource that threatens a lot of established resources. Do you have an opinion about that?
Oh, I absolutely have an opinion on that. First of all, I wanted to congratulate you because I strongly feel that cannabis is a superior chronic pain stabilizer, much better than Vicodin or the intravenous morphine pump that my doctors had me on, and far less addictive. But regarding hemp, I have to say that, the investors that I'm working with now, I work with a $100 million hedge fund from people who are from Wall Street, who are corporate leaders all across this country. And believe me, even the hemp bill, I mean, you've seen where the Hemp Farm Act was just recently signed in Congress. And we all know that this is all basically an education process. The people who are educated about hemp and cannabis know that back in the 30s, it was the Hearst Corporation that basically started an anti-propaganda campaign against hemp and cannabis because they felt that it was going to move into their wood reserves and the paper trade. So this is really an education campaign. And when you see that the first legal hemp farm was just harvested in Colorado, the Hemp Farm Bill was just signed in Congress itself. We're on our way, and again, as I said earlier, this is all about a media and an awareness campaign. And the more we talk about this at the water coolers and at the dinner table, the more we're going to change policy.
Joe, first of all, I want to thank you for your service, by the way, sincerely, and I'm sorry for everything that you've had to come back to with PTSD. Are you getting any help for that other than smoking marijuana?
Well, no, I've weaned myself from my addiction to the prescription drugs that they were writing prescriptions down per foot, and I take a little bit of cannabis when I need to, and it really does help. Everything from physical pain to my mental state.
And sorry,
I don't legally medicate with alcohol like I know a lot of people are.
Right.
So,
but my question is, are you? My question is, are you seeing a therapist?
Yeah, I've seen a therapist, and they can't legally prescribe it for me in this state,
Yeah, see, that's the quagmire. He's going to see, and he's going to get help, and he's in pain. And, Joe, I mean, listen, like we said, you're going to, you got to do what you got to do, and I'm horrifically sorry for the pain you're in. And if there's anything you can do, if there's any help we could offer you, because we do have a lot of places in the Oregon area that if you're ever finding, maybe your therapist at the VA, if that's not enough, if there's anything at Klean that we could do to help you, please let us know. And I'm not saying that because I think, you treating it with marijuana is bad or any of that stuff. I'm just saying sometimes self-medicating, which Cheryl was talking about too, isn't always the right thing. And treating your PTSD with marijuana, I think both Cheryl and I might say that might be a little scary.
Well, I actually would disagree with you.
That's okay.
I was the victim.
I would disagree too.
Well, you're allowed to.
Yeah.
I hope you do.
I personally, I was the victim of a sexual assault many years ago, and was prescribed. My doctor actually had me on 80 milligrams of Prozac a day, another 10 milligrams, I think, of Xanax, Halcyon. There were all different kinds of medications, and I was a zombie. And I will say, for me personally, I'm not a doctor, but for me personally, cannabis actually works better than any of the pharmaceuticals as a mood stabilizer.
Again, that's for you.
That's why I said.
And Joe, thanks for the call. And that scares me a little bit, because that really does scare me in a sense, because we're not therapists, we're not psychiatrists, and I get the argument that they're in it, they're shills for the industries, but it scares me that Joe, who's gave his life almost for this country and came back, may not be getting all the treatment that we can provide, and it scares me that he might be taking something that might hurt him more.
I agree with you on that, but I will tell you also that I spent the 3 months this summer with the University of Jerusalem, and there are a number of actual clinical studies where they're using cannabis to treat PTSD specifically. So there are clinical trials that are showing that it works.
Right.
And in addition to that, what people don't know is the American Veterans Association just approved the use of medical cannabis in the VA hospitals itself, specifically for post-traumatic stress disorder.
Which I think is amazing, but the problem sort of is I didn't get from Joe that he was actually getting that. And if you're going to be treating something, just like a psychiatrist gives you meds, and you should be seeing that psychiatrist often and seeing how the meds are working out for you. And with that, let's go to a psychiatrist. Let's go to Klean's own Dr. Ko, who's how are you, Doc?
I'm good. How are you, Judah?
Good, and welcome to Klean Radio in the studio tonight with the amazing Cheryl Shuman.
Well, thank you for taking my call.
Oh, that's
Maybe not.
No, that's just Dr. Ko. That's his.
Hi, Dr.
He
Ko.
also just got off a plane yesterday from London. So,
my question is, I want to know your opinion on marijuana's effects on motivation and memory.
Well, I think a lot of it depends on what genetic strain that you're using, and that's one of the reasons that I've spent so much time with endocannabinoid scientists and doctors all over the world, because I wanted to understand and really learn about the genetics of the cannabis itself. In our garden specifically, we have over 31 strains that are all bred genetically for specific ailments. Let's just break down the two basic components, sativas and indicas. Of course, there's hybrids in the middles, but a sativa, if someone's using a sativa that's a pure sativa, let's say a strawberry cough from Barney's Farms out of Amsterdam genetics, that actually works better during the day. However, if someone were using something during the day that's, say, an OG Kush, which is a pure indica, that's going to impact their motivation and their memory, because it's not what you're supposed to use during the day. There are cannabis strains that are specifically and genetically bred to help focus. So for people who have ADD, instead of taking a pharmaceutical, there are very specific strains that are pure sativa dominants that actually work very well during the day and help keep you motivated.
Oh, this is the first I'm hearing about this.
Well, I'm here to educate.
she's actually going to send us that study in the mail.
Okay.
I'll post it online.
Yeah,
for
she'll
you.
post it online, and we'll post that.
Because
Yeah.
most of what I see in clinical practice are people who are having a lot of trouble with concentration, motivation, and memory, and so they're really having a lot of side effects.
Well, do you want to know, seriously, Dr. Ko, the biggest problem for that? Because most people who are not educated on the genetics of the plant, when they go into dispensary, sadly, most people go in, especially younger kids, go in and say, hey, look, dude, I just want to get the highest high I can get. And that's a lack of education, and that's most likely what you're seeing. I mean, like I said, I'm a 54-year-old woman. During the day,
You don't look it.
Thank you.
53,
Thank
not
you.
54. No, I'm joking.
But no, like for me, I work in the corporate world. I run a very successful company. I work in the media. So it's very important for me to be focusing on my game during the day. So, I mean, look at me right now. Do I seem high to you right now? Of course not, because I'm using a sativa, and it actually works to increase my focus and help me stay calm, even though I'm nervous being here on radio with you.
But you're also not an addict.
No.
And I think with Dr. Ko also is, here's the problem for addiction, and pot is addictive, and that's a myth, and I've heard Sanjay Gupta talk about nobody's ever died from pot. Really? how do you know? It's one of the craziest things that I've ever heard somebody say, actually. But for an addict, they don't know when to stop. They don't, for them, and pot is 30% more potent today than it was in the 70s. That's 30%. This isn't your hippy-dippy weed. This is some real stuff. And, sorry, Doc?
Yeah, they're definitely breeding for more and more powerful strains of marijuana, which, from a psychiatrist's point of view, are quite dangerous.
And then, just so you know about something about Dr. Carr, I want you to know this, because he's one of the he's an awesome psychiatrist. When you say to him, he's as the last resort is giving pills. Mm-hmm. That's his last resort. He's not a shill for the for the medical industry. He's against it. He's all for psychotherapy, and he's all for that stuff. And he's one of the most honest psychiatrists in Los Angeles, or in the country, I should say. So his thing on this isn't,
no, I totally understand. But he actually said something that I wanted to address that was very important. And part of it's true. A lot of people are breeding cannabis to get the strongest THC. And I've seen THC as high in concentrates as 98%. But at the same time, with the new genetic information that's coming out with THCA, CBD, CBDA, and CBDG.
A lot of initials, yes.
Well, but what that is, those are the non-psychoactive ingredients of the plant. And I could actually show you just as many people breeding plants to be less psychoactive because it's working for children. I mean, I think the most famous case is the Dravet syndrome case with little Charlotte Figi that Dr. Sanjay Gupta featured. There are a number of top geneticists all around the world who are now breeding down and breeding out the THC and the psychoactive.
You see, again, you're getting into being responsible.
Yes.
And how dare you? But
how dare I?
Yes, but you see, that my fear isn't you. You're a responsible woman. You're a mom of two. You're a successful businesswoman. That's not my fear.
But I'm trying to herd the cats.
My fear is the 29,990 people in Colorado right now. I'm going to give 10 that they're okay. Okay? Now, it wasn't a full 30,000. And that's my fear. And that's why I would love for you to say, I'm not going to ask you to do this, but that's why it's so important for somebody like you to say, you know what, to stand up and be somewhat the regulator, if for a better word, to say maybe we're not ready, medical marijuana, 100%, let's make it legal. But somewhere in the middle, we have to come up. So that we have to come up with a resolve to help younger people, to help all people. I hate when people say younger people, because somehow 17, the 40-year-old guy, who cares about him anymore? The 17-year-old guy, or the 13-year-old kid. Doc, we got to run because we're lining up with calls.
One more question.
One more.
Quick question.
Yes.
What's the mechanism, Cheryl, the medical or physiologic mechanism of the marijuana?
You mean the delivery system?
No. How does it actually help the body?
Well, again, it depends on what strain and what you're using it for. I mean, for me, I have acute pulmonary histoplasmosis. I have asthma. I have 5 fractured vertebrae. I have liver tumors. I have so many different ailments. I could go to, I'd be happy to have a private conversation or sit down with you.
I'm going to actually set that up.
I'd love to.
Doc, I'll talk to you later.
Okay.
Thank you, Doctor.
Have a great night, Doc. And if you just tuned in, you're listening to Klean Radio. We're in the studio tonight with Cheryl Shuman. She's an awesome lady, and I say that a lot, but she is. And she's the founder. I've said that to you a lot tonight. I don't say a lot. And she's the founder of the Beverly Hills Cannabis Club. She's also the pot mom. And I think we're having a good discussion tonight, and I mean that. I really do respect and value what you're saying because you've obviously done your due diligence and you've studied so much on this. That's my fear, though. My fear is that you're a responsible woman. But we're unleashing something on people that aren't exactly the most responsible of people. Teenagers aren't going to look for the strands like you're talking about and going, well, I want to just, go to a ball game today. I'm going to take strand D. It's and that to me is my fear.
Well, and that's why programs like this are so important to educate people. And, it's not going to happen overnight, but it is happening much faster than we had ever anticipated. And a lot of this, quite frankly, is being a responsible parent and teaching your children.
Let's go to Erica in Torrance. Welcome to Klean Radio, Erica.
Hi.
Hi.
I just wanted to make a point because I've worked in the medical field for several years as an EMT, and every couple of weeks we will get a call, someone smoked too much weed, they're scared they're going to die. And basically, we have to take them to the emergency room because we can't just leave them in an altered state of mind.
Do you drive slower? I'm joking, because weed makes you slow. Bad joke.
My point is, how would you try to, how would you deal with that? Because, like, ambulances are already stretched to their limits, and how would you keep, if an ambulance is responding to someone having a panic attack over smoking too much weed, when they could be, helping someone that's actually having a real medical emergency. I mean, in that sense, I think marijuana could cause a death indirectly.
Well, I mean, I think that's possible, but I think also, I mean, none of us have the right to make a diagnosis of someone, and that's really up for a doctor to decide. I don't support, irresponsible use of cannabis, but that being said, it's really not my place or anyone else's place to make a physical decision as to who is or is not in danger.
And Erica, thanks for the call. Maybe that's something you should think about doing, setting up like a pot ambulance. For pot users, they could call 420, and there's an ambulance specifically that comes for potheads, And here's the problem, again, you're not a pothead. You're somebody that's had issues with, physical ailments, and you have found that my fear is for that's my fear. And my fear isn't for people like you. And I actually think it's great what you're doing. You're setting up corporately, so it's more, so there are going to be more restrictions, more regulations, and all that jazz. And you're going to be able to, talk about all these different levels of all the different things that are going on.
Well, in addition to that, I mean, I work with mothers and parents all across the country on how to recognize, quite frankly, cannabis abuse within teens and younger people, because, again, this is about responsible adult use.
If they're eating a lot at night and you find your food missing in the fridge in the morning, there's a good chance your son or daughter is smoking a lot of pot. Just a hunch. Let's go to Mike in Hillsboro, Oregon. Welcome to Clean Radio, Mike. Sorry, Mike, you there?
Conversation. Totally disagree with it.
Sorry, Mike. We missed the first part of what you were about to say.
Oh, I'm glad that you got the conversation, but I totally disagree with the lady. I'm 74, and I've not. And I quit using pot in 1966.
Wow. Just as it became cool.
No, I quit using it because it was killing me, and it killed two friends of mine and caused another one to stab his father to death.
Wow.
And so, this lady, she's slicker than snot on a board, and that's fine. But the thing about it is, it robbed me of my ability to sleep without nightmares. All these years, I have battled that because of my experimentation with weed, and it damn near killed 3 of my children. And it has been a full court press battle in my family against that filthy weed. And I'm calling it that. That's filthy weed, and that is so much just like 1984. It is mind control of the worst sort.
Okay, Mike, thanks for calling the Clean Radio. And I'm sure you've never been called. We're going to actually record that.
I liked it.
Yeah, it was actually really cool.
Hey, I can roll with it.
I would actually love to be.
But let me address something that first of all, I'd like to say to the gentleman, I'm really sorry that he had that experience. But keep in mind that the thing that really stood out in that conversation is he's talking about cannabis that he had from the 60s. Now, back in the 60s, there were no regulations. There was no lab testing. Right. So you don't know, especially if you were buying it on the street, what was it laced with? It could have been laced with PCP. It could have been laced with pesticides. And you know what? Those things can do terrible things to people. Today, in 2014, everything is lab tested and regulated.
Which has made it extremely stronger, too.
And safer.
Okay, so everybody wants me to ask you, because I've been getting a bunch of these, what are dabs?
Oh, gosh. Dabs are the concentrates. What they do is they extract the trichromes and the resin from the cannabis itself. It's highly, highly concentrated. And what most people hear about dabbing, I mean, for example, the High Times Cannabis Cup in Denver is basically a dabbing festival. But most people hear about dabbing because of the BHO home explosions where people are trying to do the extraction process in a home and don't know what they're doing. So it can be very dangerous.
So it has caused deaths.
It has caused, well, the explosions certainly have. Yes,
Well,
absolutely. Yeah.
Yes. No, but again, it goes to the point of people saying that marijuana is not dangerous. Some very archaic arguments.
But even in that case, though, it wasn't the marijuana that was dangerous. It was the kids that was using an illegal substance and an illegal extraction method under unsafe conditions. It's like the same people who are cooking meth, from things. Those are very unsafe conditions. They should be done through a CO2 extraction process in a laboratory.
We have another quick call. My co-host couldn't help but call in because he obviously wanted to talk about this. Andrew, how are you? I know the answer, so don't answer that.
Suffering from food poisoning, so sorry I couldn't be there tonight.
Well, welcome.
Welcome, Andrew.
Yeah, there wasn't a marijuana that could fix my food poisoning. So
I could find one, I promise you.
Oh, I don't know about that. Anyway, I guess my major concern, and I'm really glad that you were able to come on the show, and I'm so sorry I couldn't be there. There was many things I wanted to discuss. One of the main ones is that people have been calling, and there has been discussion of the externalities that occur from smoking marijuana, and the more widespread it becomes, and the more potent it becomes, I think the more we're going to get clarity on what these externalities are, and a lot of them are extremely negative. And typically we see with governments is when they tax something, they take that tax money and then they cost shift. They take money from other things and they claim it's going for schools, they claim it's going for addiction treatment, but they take the money that was going for that and they put it into something else, some sort of, earmarked bill for themselves. There needs to be, in my opinion, some real thought and process put into the law about how to create regulations and then how to make sure that the monies are used appropriately and additive to the budgets, not just cost shifting out of them. What are you doing politically to try and make sure those kind of things happen?
Well, I 100% agree with you. In fact, one of my best friends is a political strategist and consultant.
He's actually in the studio
tonight. And is in the
yeah.
studio with me here tonight. But no, I work very, very actively and have for decades now, working with city councils, working with Congress, working with senators, and in pretty much every state, on a federal level, on a state level, on a city level. And I absolutely agree with you. It's very, very important that we have responsible cannabis consumers who understand the culture, who understand the medicinal aspect as well as the currently unregulated use. And that's why it's important to have these experts who have studied working with politicians so they can understand how to make it all work together. And that's actually all happening behind the scenes right now, not only on a city level, but on a state level and a federal level.
Well, as we know, though, America is set up by a series of states, all that experiment with their own sort of thing, and then eventually the federal government comes along behind it and decides what's right or wrong. We seem to already have a lot of differentiation between the different states into what they're willing to allow, from full legalization, which seems completely irresponsible to me, to medical marijuana in some restricted forms, which also they don't seem to really be able to regulate properly. Even in California, I live in a condo unit, and I swear to God, I moved back into a college dorm. It's just like you walk in, and it just reeks of pot all the time. And for me, that's annoying. I don't like the smell of pot particularly. And, if people would vaporize, I could see. But, now it's become another public health hazard that I have to deal with people smoking marijuana all the time. We just finally are getting a cap on cigarettes. Barely. We'd be able to reduce the use by half, but we're talking about a pretty toxic smoke.
Well,
and people are smoking it.
I agree with you. In fact, that's one of the reasons I invented one of the very first e-cigs for cannabis, because it is much safer to vaporize. So I absolutely agree with you on that. The other thing, too,
so how would you feel about a law that said that people were only allowed to vaporize marijuana?
I would support that 100% personally, because I do think that vaporizing is a much better health method. But there's another thing to address that you had brought up, and that's the inconsistencies between the different states. For example, I'm a legal patient both in Colorado Colorado and in California, but there's no reciprocity if I go to Michigan or if I go to another state. The other thing that I think is very important is to mention the possibility that President Obama himself could change the entire landscape of this movement by signing an executive order to reschedule cannabis. And that could happen on a federal level. And it's my opinion, based on the people that I know and that I talk to on a regular basis, I believe that he may just possibly do that to leave a legacy at the end of his presidency.
Andrew, we are running out of...
Let me just say quickly, I think the scheduling marijuana obviously was a political move by Nixon, and I think, as much as you talked about the Hearst Company in cannabis, or I'm sorry, actually hemp being used as an industrial project, it was the number one crop in America when we first became a nation, and it probably could return to being one pretty quickly. But there is a huge political component, especially, surrounding Vietnam and Nixon's attempt to control political movements against him. And unfortunately, marijuana is tied up into a lot of those issues. I just would like to add, just lastly, though, that I have seen a lot of damage done by marijuana, mostly in combination with other drugs as well, through polyaddiction. And there may be 90% of the population out there that's going to be able to use marijuana and use it effectively, but we do have to be aware of the 10 to 12% that's not going to be able to, because they have propensity to addiction, whether it be just marijuana or marijuana and other drugs. And saying that marijuana has benefits doesn't mean that we as a society can't ignore our responsibility to take care of those that fall below that crack and do have a propensity to falling into troubles with addiction.
Andrew, we got to run.
Okay.
Next time, I'm going to have Cheryl back in, and you will be here, stomach sickness or not. And get well, my friend. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cheryl, I think what we could all agree on is that you're very big in this. You have an important voice.
Thank you.
You're doing, some good. You're doing good. But what Andrew was saying and what I was trying to say is maybe you're also the voice of the middle. And like you said, you've been getting death threats, and people stop. Stop with the death threats. It drives me crazy these days. It used to take a lot to do a death threat. You had to mail a letter. You had to write down a whole thing.
Now
it's a tweet, okay? If you're going to make a death threat, come on. Get an envelope. Get a piece of paper. Do it the old-fashioned way. Get some stamps. And death threats are made easier for potheads. That's a whole big reason to be anti-pot. It'll lessen the death threats.
I wanted to leave with one idea. There was one thing I wanted to address. There's actually some studies being held right now as using cannabis as an exit drug to wean people off of heroin and opiates.
And that's something we will definitely talk about if you ever come back on the show, and that's all up to you, because you're always welcome, Cheryl.
Thank you.
And I really want to thank you. How do people find you?
CherylShuman.com, CherylShuman, or BeverlyHillsCannabisClub.com.
Well, she's so big. CherylShuman.com is hers. And thank you again for coming on Clean Radio. Thank you, everybody out there that helped put the show together. The discussion continues at CleanRadio.com.
Don't let addiction to drugs or alcohol steal another year of your life. Klean Treatment Center provides world-class addiction assistance that also treats the underlying causes and provides vital aftercare so people can get clean and stay clean. Live, kind, professional help is standing by to provide immediate assistance or to simply answer questions and provide guidance. If you or someone you care about is suffering from addiction, take action now and make 2014 the best year of your life with Klean Treatment Center.